My cousin stole loads of jewelry, so I stole his inheritance. Back to They Did What? Your source for the internet's craziest, most entertaining stories, where I go over them, analyze them, and most certainly make fun of them. Today, going to cover a story titled, My Cousin Stole Loads of Jewelry, so I Stole His Inheritance. And guys, this story is another example, a great revenge story dealing with family and money. As I'm sure some of you guys unfortunately have seen, or in your personal lives or people you know, when it comes to family and money, it doesn't always go very well, particularly when there's an inheritance and there's a lot of money going along. And in this story here, it's about this guy who gets screwed over by his low-life cousin with regards to his grandfather. This guy had a great relationship with his grandfather, and this guy obviously was going to be set to inherit a lot of money, and his low-life cousin sabotaged things, as you're going to see, to tarnish his relationship with his grandfather right before he died. But this guy gets some serious payback on this low-life cousin, and believe me, at the end, has the last laugh. So for any of you guys who have unfortunately had relatives like this, you will enjoy seeing somebody get what's coming to them. So, starts off, he says, I did not speak to a lawyer, so please forgive me. The backstory. 25 years ago, my aunt passed away when I was a baby, leaving my two cousins, who were both in their early 20s, alone to fend for themselves. My grandparents, who are very wealthy, put a clause in their will that grandkids will receive half of their share of inheritance if a parent passes before the children reach age 30, and then the other half of my parents eventually passed away. Both my cousins received a very sizable inheritance coupled with the money they got from selling my aunt's house. The younger of the two paid off her college loans and then was able to buy property. She still lives on the same plot of land. The older sibling blew all his money, straight out of the book of the Bible, within 6 years. He was back to living in a condo, working as a police officer. Everyone in our small family knew he had a substance abuse, and he was barely making ends meet with his officer salary and buying a lot of drugs. He's a cop and he's buying drugs. The next 4 years, my cousin went to rehab 3 times, sponsored by my grandparents. He sobered up after getting his girlfriend, now wife, pregnant. Absolutely a wretched woman. She saw my grandparents as payday and eventually baby-trapped my cousin, thinking it was her ticket. Within 7 years, they had 3 kids, so she is locked in tight. She is a nurse, and with 3 kids around, they always needed a little boost. Guess who they would ask? You got it, my grandparents. Being the kind spirits that they are, they always lended a hand. My father, mother, and sister and I got sick of it very quickly. It seems like every family has that leech. And the kind-hearted grandparents are being, they want to take care of the young ones and all that. And usually those people that mooch off the wealthy family members, they know how to play them like a fiddle. My grandmother, unfortunately, passed away when I was 17, leaving my grandpa as the last remaining. I was undoubtedly my grandfather's favorite among the grandkids, which he left a real sore spot in my mouth of my cousin and his wife. I had 2 more years at home before college, so I lived with my grandpa to keep him company and help take care of him. That's great. That's cool. My cousin and his wife hated this so much that whenever they came to visit and I was not home, they would send their 3 gremlins into my room to destroy it. My room had double doors, so it couldn't be locked. This was the start. The longer I lived there, the more they would mess with me. I wouldn't tolerate that bullshit for a second. I don't care if it's an older cousin. I don't care if that dude's a cop. Believe me, even high school me would have laid down the law. My cousin even went so far to place one of those little mechanical noisemakers in the cabinet in my room, the ones that play sounds at random intervals that make you think you're insane. Thankfully, my German Shepherd would always hear it, and after a week or so, she finally found it. They did this to distance me and to deter me from taking care of my grandpa so they could swoop in and be the heroes. This continued until one of the kids found my GUN. I got a speaking code here. You never know with YouTube, guys. By this time, I was 18 and in the possession of a firearm. I use quotations because my grandfather had weapons as well, but cannot aim and shoot them anymore due to arthritis and nerve degeneration. So when I moved in, he placed all the weapons in my hands should the need of self-defense arise. But should he see them out for any reason other than cleaning, there would be hell to raise. Being well trained with them and having a sense of pride in defending my home, I took this responsibility very seriously. I always kept one of those GUNs and a locked container in my nightstand with the key on a high shelf out of reach from the gremlins. That, in my opinion, is a mistake. You should have kept that key on him at all times, not where kids could very easily climb in a chair and get a hold of it. That's a mistake, but he was young. On one fateful day, I'm out getting my grandfather food when I come home and my older cousin, his wife, my grandfather are staring at a gun on the table. It was mine and that kept in the lockbox. It was loaded and had a bullet chambered. I always keep a magazine in the lockbox but never loaded in the weapon. The lockbox was nowhere to be seen. My cousin claimed that one of the children found, he says that in quotations, found the gun and was playing with it. I was 100% certain that he either found the key or broke the lockbox to open it and get it and load it, as a 6-year-old would not be able to reach a key I could barely grab, figure out what to do, load it, and chamber it. I tried my best to explain what my cousin had said was BS and that I never keep the firearms loaded in the house. But my cousin, who is a cop, scolded me on gun safety and threatened to have me arrested if I didn't leave it and hadn't arrested me because I was family. I was asked to collect my belongings and go back to my parents. My cousin had won, so he thought. What a freaking lowlife. He has a great relationship with the grandfather he's living with and taking care of grandpa, and this piece of crap goes in and does what he does to sabotage the situation. Well, this guy's a lowlife, but he'll get his in the end. The next day, I apologized to Grandpa and explained to him there was no way the kids could have gotten the key. He agreed with me and he apologized, but he thought it was best I move out until things cool down, but once they do, I'd be welcome back home. What do you mean things cool down? Grandpa's grandpa. Grandpa can do whatever the hell he wants. If it means cool down with the a-hole cousin, screw him. It says here, our relationship was a little fractured due to the disinformation provided by my cousin. A month later, my grandfather died of a heart attack at 86. I was devastated. I was just beginning to get back into the rhythm with him and rebuilding the trust that was somewhat shattered. To this day, I'm still unaware of what kind of man he saw me as due to my cousin. I think he knew who you were. And I think probably deep down the last man he realized who the cousin was. You know? That's a shame. That really is. Immediately, my cousin and his wife began sucking up to my dad, as they'd all sealed payday with Grandpa. It was time to move on to the uncle. This persisted for a month or two. I wouldn't stand for it. Then came the time for the will. My grandfather's lawyer read out the will to me, my father, my mother, and sister in our home. Our two cousins we briefed individually on their share of the estate, per my grandfather's request. Then the miracle line in the will comes to a pass. And the miracle line is this. If anyone attempts to claim any part of the estate that is not assigned to them, they forfeit any assets they are supposed to receive, and it will be divided equally among the remaining family members. This was basically their way of saying, if you try to claim more than you're given, you get nothing. My father is supposed to receive every piece of physical property, aside from 2 or 3 items he set aside for me, for my grandfather, as he is the only remaining child. Now, on to the revenge. He says, I hatched my plan. I called my cousin and told him all of my grandma's jewelry was to be donated to a charity auction. Grandma's collection of gems and medals was extensive to say the least, so a charity event wouldn't care if a few pieces didn't make it, right? It was a lure of gargantuan proportions that my greedy bastard of a cousin could not resist. He bit right on it and headed over to my grandparents' house ASAP. Determined to snatch up as much as he could, a handful would send his kids to college. Regardless of what I said, the jewelry was never going to go to him anyways, so his actions was purely his own, since none of it was destined to be his. Coincidentally, Dad was on his way with a lawyer to my grandfather's house to overlook everything formality stuff. So remember what he said about the clause in the will about trying to claim more than what's yours and all that? And he set his greedy cousin up because he knew that when he'd see that jewelry that was supposed to be taken to be donated in an auction for charity, that he would take he'd skim off the top, if you will, the jewelry for himself. He says, according to my dad's testimony, my cousin had 3 shoeboxes worth of Grandma and Grandpa's jewelry piled on the kitchen counter, ready for loading in his car. My dad and the lawyer stood in the kitchen wondering why it was all there when my cousin walks in from my grandpa's bedroom with a 4th and final shoebox. The jig was up, and he put 2 and 2 together that I set him up. which was true, but there was no penalty against me for exploiting my cousin's greed so he could F himself over. It's worth noting that between the 18 years from my aunt's death and my grandpa's death, their wealth has increased several times over, so my cousin felt cheated and expected to receive just as much as my sister and I, despite receiving half of his already and blowing it. Throughout this whole ordeal, his younger sister, my other cousin, has not had a problem at all and is still weeping over Grandpa's death like the rest of us. Yeah, everybody in the family is upset that Grandpa died. They loved him very much, including this guy, but the other guy has his greedy little paws together, figuring what he can get from this guy. And this is the a-hole who pissed all his money away that he got in inheritance years earlier. That's usually how these types work. And then set this guy up. And I guarantee that the biggest thing for him was how he just made a problem with him and his grandpa temporarily before the grandfather passed away. That's unforgivable. So this guy got what he deserved. He says, however, just like that, my cousin lost enough money in the course of 30 minutes that made him contemplate his sanity over greed. My cousin's B word of a wife apparently filed for divorce a few weeks later. We haven't heard from him in nearly 6 years, as he is all but a disgrace now. You can call this a fairy tale ending, and on this particular part of the story, it somewhat... he says in parentheses, there was a massive lawsuit by an unknown family member involving the IRS and FBI later on. But honestly, I'd rather have my grandparents. So, there you go. Justice is served. That guy, the cousin screwed him over, made him look bad, got him kicked out of the house with Grandpa and all that. And obviously, to make his situation better so he could probably inherit more, thinking Grandpa's going to pass away anytime. But ultimately, he passes away and it's sad. But this guy's clever. He knows how greedy he is and set him up, and the guy fell for it, and he got nothing. Awesome. And that guy's wife kicked him to the curb 6 weeks later. You see why she was with him. So I like hearing these stories when pieces of crap, especially in family, get what's coming to them. Because I've talked about this all the time, and especially on my other channel, about how, unfortunately, you can't help who you're born into in your family, but you can make a decision whether you have them in your life. And sometimes family can really hold people back, and it's best, honestly, whether you're family or not, to kick them out of your life so they don't bring any drama and turmoil into your life, because it's unbelievable. I'm fortunate not to have this kind of crap in my family. I have a couple people I don't talk to, but some families I've heard terrible stories about what they endure and the BS they go through and all that. So it's sad, but it does happen. So that's good. Justice was served. So, guys, I thought you would enjoy that. Be sure to comment down below. Let me know what you think about this. And, guys, if you have a great story you'd like to share with me that you come across that you can find online, by all means, email it to me, strongsuccessfulmale@gmail.com. Strong Successful Male is my other channel in case you guys don't follow it. Check it out. And be sure to like the video, share it with your friends, and subscribe. And I'll catch you next time.